Hey there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're having a great day. Today is part 2 of a 2-part series featuring the July 2018 Hero Arts Kit, the My Monthly Hero. And I'm going to be doing cards 5 through 8 today. So if you missed part 1, be sure to head back to my channel so you can go check that out. For card number 5, I have a piece of 4" by 5 1/4 Neenah cardstock, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Clouds for Days stencil, along with some Salty Ocean Distress ink and a mini ink blending tool, and I am going to just be flipping that stencil all around and putting down a cloud background just to completely cover that panel. Now the awesome thing about this stencil is every time you turn your stencil, you're going to get a different cloud pattern. The downside that I discovered with this stencil is that because it has those openings in the center, you could potentially, if you're not careful, which I wasn't, you're going to end up possibly blending the ink into the center of those clouds where you may not want that. And so you can kind of see each time I do this, I'm kind of picking up in the center there and I'm getting it right into those clouds. But you know what? It's okay. It ends up blending out because, you know, it's a sky. So next time I think I'll just kind of mask those off with some Post-it tape. And now I am going to stamp the balloons onto my background using some Lawn Fawn jet black ink. And I'm using the 3 little balloon images that came in this kit, or in this stamp set. The star, the regular balloon, and the little heart balloon. Next I will stamp out the plane and the banner using Lawn Fawn jet black ink and using that same kind of cardstock. And then I will grab the sentiment, which says hello there, and it fits just beautifully inside that banner, and I'll stamp that as well. I'll line up the coordinating die and run that through my Sizzix Sidekick. To color in my balloons, I'm going to use my Copics, and it's really simple coloring. I'm just using about 2 colors per image. And I actually really love how you can see the clouds through the balloons. It makes perfect sense. These are balloons, and they might be a little bit transparent. So I just really like how that turned out. So I go about coloring each of the balloons using my Copics. My card base is a piece of Neenah Desert Storm, and it is a side folding card that was originally 4 1/4 inches by 11 inches, and it's scored at 5 1/2 inches. So I'm using some tape runner to adhere my panel, my cloud panel, to the front of that card, and I'm just leaving a small border on the top and bottom. And then I adhere my plane and banner using some foam tape. Now I'm putting some glossy glaze on each of the balloons to make them a little bit shiny when that dries, and I have actually taken my glossy glaze and I have put it into a different bottle. This bottle has a standard tip and it has a pin cap cover, so that way it never gets clogged. That was the problem I was having with my glossy glaze, and so I ended up changing it to a different bottle. So I'll link that down below if that's something that you happen to be interested in. And that was simple. That finishes off card number 5. For card number 6, I have grabbed a piece of Kansan XL watercolor paper, and it is 110 pounds, and I am going to ink up that long scene with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And this paper has a little bit of tooth to it, so I am going to just keep stamping until I have good coverage. That texture sometimes makes it a little bit difficult to get a good impression, but that's why we have the stamp platform. So I'll just keep stamping that, and then I'll do the same thing with the sentiment using that same VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And I'll stamp that a couple times. And then I'm going to pull out my Magellan Mission Gold watercolors, and these are a really good watercolor. If you want a good quality watercolor that won't completely break the bank, I think these are a good alternative to that. So I've sped up my watercoloring, and I'm just laying down color. I'm using a flat wash pretty much, and I'm just tapping my water brush or my paintbrush into the paint and putting down a bunch of water and just kind of letting that look like, or at least try to make it look like the paint has spread around, but with a little bit more control. And I'm just going to go through all the colors there in the rainbow. And then once that dries a little bit, I'll go right back to the red and I will add some more color and just keep working that paint. I've really enjoyed these watercolors. I'm since I've sold a few things, I'm kind of thinking about investing in some Daniel Smith just to kind of see how those work a little bit more. And I've had a couple of their the dots through Simon Says stamp, and I've used up those, and I really like the way those work. So we'll see, because that's definitely an investment, but we'll see what I decide. Anyway, I'm just continuing with laying down the paint here, intensifying it where I like it, and kind of letting those colors mix just a little bit. I don't have too much water on this paper, and then once I have the look that I kind of like, I'm going to stop there and just dry that. I have another piece of Nina's Desert Storm cardstock, and I am using my Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky glue to glue the background or the panel down onto that background. And this is pretty simple. I just want to make sure that that's on there pretty well. I'm going to trim off a little bit of that excess on the side there with my scissors. And once I have that all trimmed off there, simple, that's going to finish off card number 6. For card number 7, I took some old packaging and I trimmed it down to the size of something that would fit on a card front, and I just started crumpling it. My point with this was that I was kind of thinking of food again, and it made me think of like peanut bags and things like that, or just the food that, or the packaging that some of your food comes in. So that's where I was going with that. And then I took the carousel stamp and I rubbed my embossing buddy over some Nina cardstock, and I stamped that with some Versamark ink, and I took some Zing Rouge embossing powder, which I'm not sure if they make it anymore. I couldn't seem to find it in most of the popular places. So that's what I have, so that's what I used because I wanted a red embossing powder. And then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. Once that was all cooled down, I took some low tack tape, in this case micropore tape, and I just put the coordinating die over the top. And I'm trimming down that paper because I'm going to run this through my Sizzix Sidekick. You know that thing is my workhorse. So I am just going to run that through with the circle die as well. And those are the circle nestabilities. I don't know if they make those anymore either, but if they do, I will link those down below. To add a little interest to that paper background, as if it wasn't interesting enough, I am stamping my carousel using the Versamark ink. You really can't see it on screen, but it does show up in person. It just kind of gives it a watermark look. And I don't know, I really liked the way that turned out. It was very subtle, but it worked. I'm just trimming down some of that blue ribbon so that it'll fit across that paper background. And I'm going to start assembling my card. I am using that same Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky glue to adhere the ribbon. And it isn't sticking quite right away, but it's okay. It will eventually. It might be because that background is pretty roughed up. So I just kind of get it how I want it. And then I decide, because it's not sticking super great, I'm just going to use some washi tape to adhere it, and that way it will, when the glue dries, eventually stay put. Because you won't see that, it's on the back. To adhere that to my Nina card base, I am going to use a tape runner. And that works pretty well. I didn't need glue for this. I thought the tape runner would work just fine. And for my sentiment, I am grabbing the VersaFine Onyx Black ink because I knew that would be nice and dark on that paper background. I will adhere my circle with the Craft Tacky glue. And then I'm going to use some foam tape to adhere my carousel. It was just screaming for some dimension here. And then I'm going to flip that over and trim that excess off, and that'll finish off card number 7. For my final card in this series, card number 8, I used that background die to die cut some Nina cardstock, and I am going to put that on the front of card, obviously, but I'm going to use the red pieces that I had from one of my previous cards. I saved all those pieces, and I am going to piece that back together. So my card base is going to be the same kind of cardstock. It's just some Nina cardstock, and I'm going to score that at 5.5, and it was a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece, so that makes it a top folding A2 size card. And I am going to use the Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky glue, just like I did before, because it really worked very well and it doesn't leave any sticky residue wherever it's left over. So once I've got that adhered, I'm going to start paper piecing those little flag banners back in to those sections where they go. And I thought I was going to use my crystal katana, but it was pointless. These are big enough pieces, I can just do it with my hands. So I'll just keep going and I will do that. I grabbed another piece of that Nina cardstock, and I also grabbed my Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I stamped out the Ferris wheel. And I also stamped out 3 of the clouds. I am planning to do a little bit of Copic coloring, nothing fancy. These are very small images, so there isn't really any need to do a lot of shadowing or anything like that. The only Copic color that I'm going to be using on this Ferris wheel is that Y28, and I'm just going to use it just all over those little images. Again, it's really too small for too much shadowing. And then I grabbed a gold Spica pen, which gives a little shine and shimmer. It has a little bit of glitter in it, and I'm just coloring that over the top of some of those. And then I have that, oh, I can't even see what that is. It's one of the bees, and I'm just coloring my clouds with that. And then I ran that through my Sizzix Sidekick with the matching die. And I have a piece of vellum now that I'm going to stamp the sentiment on because I don't want to cover up that pretty background. So I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm going to stamp that in the middle there. And then I'm going to cover that with some clear embossing powder and then heat that up with my heat tool. You don't need to put it on there for very long, or you could melt the vellum. And so while I wait for that to cool, I'll use some foam tape to adhere my Ferris wheel and just some tacky glue to put down the clouds. Because that is vellum, y'all probably know that any adhesive that I put on that background there will show through. So I have that piece longer than the panel, and I'm just folding that over, and I'm going to put some of that tacky glue on those folds. And then I will adhere those pieces to the inside. And yeah, it will show when you open the card, but I don't think it matters. It'll be tacked down pretty well. And then that way that background still shows so nicely. As a finishing touch, I'm going to grab some of my Nuvo Gold Nuvo drops, and I'm just going to put a few of those down just so that it'll go well with the Ferris wheel. And once I'm done putting all those down, I'm going to kind of smack it down, kind of give them more of an enamel dot look. And then you've got to let those cure for about 24 hours, but that finishes off card number 8. So now we'll take a look at the last 4 cards. I would love to hear which one is your favorite, like always. And thanks so much, guys, for always liking and subscribing. And as always, thanks for stopping by.